Hi developers, now we will see reactive forms. In my earlier video we have discussed about template driven forms. Now we will work on reactive forms, and it uses form group and form control classes for more control and flexibility. So let's jump to the template code. Let's create a form first. It should be a reactive form. Okay. Now we will define the form. Define the form. Let's make form tag. Remove action. Here we will take name and email labels. Label, name, for is equals to name, and we will take its input field. Type is equals to text, ID is equals to name, and here let's take required for the validation purpose. And one more thing, we will use form control name here. Control name is equals to name. Okay. So what this form control name will do, it will bind this input to the name control. Okay. Okay. So now let's make a label for email. Move it to another line. Make it for email. Email. Type is equals to text. ID is equals to email. Email. And form control name is also email. Okay. So now let's create a submit button to submit the form. Button. Submit. Okay. So type of button will be submit. And this button will be disabled if the form is invalid. And let's create the form group. Group is equals to user form. Okay. So form dot valid. Okay. So now when the form is submitted, this ng submit, we need to call a method, and method name let's say on submit. On clicking the submit button, this method will get called. Okay. So now what we have done, the form is connected to this user form. Okay, using the form group directive. Each input field is bound to its control in the form group and form control name. Okay, and the submit button is disabled if the form is invalid. Okay, now we will print the data. Submitted data. We will bound it to the variable in the component file. And let's move to the component file. Here we need to import the required modules. First one is form module, and another one is reactive form module. Okay. Also, we need some classes to import. That classes are validator classes, form group, and form builder. Form group, form builder, and validators. Okay, so this we have imported, and let's add this in the imports module. Okay, so now let's declare a form group to manage the form. User form of type form group. So what we have done, we have declared a user form, declare a form group, to manage the form. Okay, and let's create a variable, let's say form data, to store the submitted form data. Form data of type, let's say any. Okay, so this is the variable to store submitted form data. Okay, so now okay, so now what we need to do, let's create a user form. Let's create a constructor, let be of type form builder. So what we have done, we have injected the form builder to simplify the form creation. Okay, this dot user form is equals to this dot fb dot group. Now we will initialize the form group with controls. Initialize the form group with controls. We have name field. Let's initialize to null, blank. Validators dot required. This is for the validation purpose. Okay. Okay, so this is the name control with the required validation. Similarly, we can do it for email. Email validators dot required. This should be required field, and validators dot email to verify the email format. Okay. So now we need to make a method. So once the form is submitted, we are calling this on submit method. So let's define it. So if the form is valid, if this dot user form a dot valid, if this is valid, this dot form data is equals to this dot user form dot value. Okay, so this user form we have defined it to the form group. Okay, G should be capital here. This dot user form dot valid, then this form values will be stored in the form data. Object is possibly undefined. Okay, so now we will console this value. Console form submitted, then this dot form data. Okay, so what we have done, we have the form builder. It is used to simplify the creation of form group, this one, and the form group contains two controls. One is name and another one is email. Okay, and validators are applied to ensure that name field is required and email field is required, and this email should be in the email format. So once the submit button is clicked, this onSubmit method is called and it will logs the data here. Okay, if this form is valid, it will logs the form data. This form fields will store in the form data. Okay, now comes to the template form. What we have done, the form is connected to the form group. The form is connected to the user form using form group directive. Okay, and each input field is bound to the form group and form control name. This form group and form control name. And if the form is invalid, then button submit button should be disabled. So let's run the code now. This submitted data, we will do interpolation. We will print form data here. Okay. JSON. Okay. So let's run the code. Okay. Let's enter the name Kashish and email k@g.com. Submit button is disabled. Let's see why. Let's see in the console what error it is giving. Expected async validator to return promise. Let's check what it is. Okay, so this array was missing. It should be in the array. So let's run the code again and go to the browser. Okay, enter the name as Kashish and email k@k.com. So now submit button is enabled because the form is valid, and click on it submit. So we are getting the output here and in the console also. Okay, and that's so we have entered only k@ only. This email is invalid, so the submit button is disabled because it is valid, because we have applied validators.email. it is validating the email format. Okay. So what we have done, we have created the reactive form, okay, using form group and form builder. So form group, it is representing the form itself as a group of controls. This form group, it has controls, name and email, and validators, these are required and email. Validators we have applied. So the form builder is injected, it is injected here, okay, into the component to simplify the form creation. And fb.group, this one, it is this method creates a form group with two controls. One is name, that is initialized with an empty string and marked as required, and email, it is also initialized with an empty string and it is validating required and valid email format. Okay, so once the form is valid, the submit button is enabled and we are calling on submit method. There we are logging it into the console, the form data. Okay, and we are building it in the UI also, this form data. So this is the concept of reactive forms.